Star Fox with dragons that shoot homing lasers! What more do you need to know? So, I've had a few people ask me what I mean when I call something a forgotten game. Well, the Panzer Dragoon series might just be the biggest example out there. It's an absolutely brilliant game experience that is unique, beautiful, artistic, engaging, carefully crafted, highly polished, and very difficult to track down. It's a series that absolutely does deserve more time in the spotlight. It has legions of fans out there on the internet, it's highly sought after by collectors, it is widely considered one of the greatest games of its time, certainly one of the best games made for its console, and the only way to experience it is to buy an original Sega Saturn and a copy of the game and play it on the original hardware. That's it. So for those of you that don't know, Panzer Dragoon is a flight-based rail shooter originally released in 1995 for the Sega Saturn, possibly Sega's most obscure console worth mentioning. The simplest and most accurate description I have for it is to say that it is a post-apocalyptic biopunk science fantasy set in a far-future human-colonized dystopian planet. And if you're still with me after all of that, then congratulations, go give yourself 100 points, because wow! In this game, you play Kale, a young hunter from a desert village trying to eke out a life on the harsh world the game is set in. One day, while out hunting with his peers, he ends up stumbling upon some ancient ruins, and while investigating them, he is attacked by a giant armored thing. But I don't know, what would you call that? An armored death crab spider? Anyway, he is saved from that problem by stumbling into a bigger one, mainly a death match between a couple of dragons. After one of their riders takes a laser beam to the chest, he lands and just before dying manages to beg Kale to continue his quest to destroy a giant black tower from which a bunch of other monstrosities are emerging before the enemy dragon can reach it and unleash some sort of insane destructive force. Kale, being a good protagonist, heeds the call of the plot, takes up his beam gun, and climbs onto his dragon to continue the fight. Okay, so all of that was way oversimplifying things. The story of Panzer Dragoon can actually appear a bit odd, but that's mostly just because it has a whole lot of lore behind it that it isn't directly telling you about. I'm not going to take the time to explain it all in detail right now, partly because learning the intricate backstory of the setting is part of the fun of the game. But basically, this human colony used to have super advanced genetic engineering technology. But it got out of control, civilization collapsed, and now there's genetically engineered monsters as weapons roaming the world all over the place, and there's this power-hungry imperial government trying to take over the world using relics of the ancient technology that they don't entirely understand, with most of the world's populace reduced to abject poverty and just trying to survive the chaos. It's a really interesting, if convoluted, setting for a story to take place on, but assuming you've followed me so far, then you should know most of what you need to understand the game's story as it is. If you want to know more, there's a very detailed backstory for the entire series included in Panzer Dragoon Orta for the original Xbox, or you can just check the series' extensive wiki page. Okay, before I go any further, I'm just gonna go out and say it. This game is fuzzy. I'm sorry, I know, I don't like it either, but as fondly as I remember it, this game just doesn't look so hot on modern televisions. It might be different if we had gotten the PS2 remake here in America, and maybe it would look better if there were any really good Sega Saturn emulators that could re-render the graphics using modern tools. But unfortunately right now, playing it on an original Sega Saturn is pretty much your only option. And it just looks kinda fuzzy. That being said, this game is still an awesome experience, because what graphical power the game does have has been entirely used to help sell the experience of the game's setting to you. The environments in Panzer Dragoon are varied, beautiful, and engaging. In one of the early episodes of the web series Extra Credits, they talk about how narrative should exude from every texture and environment, how you can tell an incredible story with a game without ever using a single line of text. I'm not going to say that the Panzer Dragoon games are the ultimate example of that idea, because we've seen some games in recent years built specifically around that concept, and obviously they are going to do it a little bit better. But I will say that Panzer Dragoon is one of the best and earliest examples of that idea in action. The world itself isn't just a pre-rendered background, it has a feel, like an alien but magical place. Everything you encounter, every creature you see, building you run into, or piece of technology you find, invokes a sense of otherworldliness, power, danger, or difference. The dragons themselves also possess this quality, but in their case it goes in the other direction. There's a sense of wonder to them, a sense of otherworldly majesty and grace, as if they are the only things left that are still right in a world where everything has gone wrong. If you've ever played the Star Fox games, then Panzer Dragoon's gameplay shouldn't be too unusual for you. Your job is to fly down a mostly predetermined corridor while dodging obstacles, avoiding enemy fire, and shooting down just about everything that crosses your path. You have two primary weapons, a blaster gun carried by your character that can rapid-fire shots in a straight line in whatever direction you happen to be aiming it, and a series of lock-on homing lasers that your dragon can fire at any enemies on screen once you drag your reticle across them. You use the same buttons for both, so you'll need to decide in real time which of your available weapons is most appropriate for the situation you're currently facing. Your blaster can do significantly more damage over time, but you have to aim it manually, as opposed to the fire and forget nature of your dragon's laser breath. The game will also occasionally mess with you by throwing certain obstacles at you which require one of the weapons specifically to deal with it, such as enemies that can block or counterattack if hit by homing lasers. One of the other notable differences from normal rail shooters is the field of view system. Enemies can come at you from any angle, and as the rider you can swivel on your dragon's back to aim and fire in any direction, but in doing so you lose the ability to direct your dragon through the air, leaving you flying in a static, straightforward direction. This serves not only a mechanical but also an aesthetic purpose. It requires you to maintain an active awareness of your surroundings at all times, as well as presenting you with a choice. Do you turn and try to eliminate the incoming threat before it can become dangerous to you, or do you stay on target and use the added maneuverability to avoid the incoming threat and deal with it once it enters your forward vector where you are strongest? It also has the added benefit of encouraging you to look around at the game's gorgeous environments and take everything in on your quest through each level. There aren't really any secrets to the main campaign of the game itself. It's pretty straightforward. Fly where you're headed, don't get hit, try to kill everything. However, there is a secret ending you can get if you beat the game on hard mode, which will unlock Wizard Mode. Now before you get all excited, it doesn't let you play as a wizard, but rather it causes the game to run at double speed, thus requiring especially good reflexes and timing to get through it. However, over the years, gamers have discovered a number of other cheat codes hidden in the game that give you all kinds of benefits and can do a number of cool things to increase the game's replayability. Not surprisingly, there's your standard invincibility and level select codes, but my favorite one is the new weapons code. With this code, if you press and hold any of the 6 controller buttons during each level's intro screen, it will allow you to select from an alternate set of blaster rifle and laser breath types, each with their own strengths and weaknesses. Please note that these are not upgrades per se, but rather alternate weapon options, as each weapon type, while more useful in some ways, often pays for its usefulness with a corresponding drawback in some other fashion. There's also rolling mode, that lets you, well, do a barrel roll. Okay, an aileron roll. Which seems kind of silly and useless until you discover that if you hold the fire button during a roll, your lock-on will automatically target everything that you can see. And finally, there's a code that lets you play through a hidden bonus level called Episode 0. This is basically a form of survival mode. Every second that you're in the level, your health gradually decreases, but you gain additional points just for being alive. The level goes on forever, with endless waves of enemies assaulting you, one after the other. The single biggest advice I can give you when it comes to this game is simply to take your time with it. Like the Star Fox or Sonic the Hedgehog games, Panzer Dragoon expects you to go through it multiple times in order to get the most out of it, partly because there's more to the environments than can be seen in a single playthrough, but also because it will take you a couple tries to learn the game's patterns. So be patient, don't get upset if you have to restart it a couple times to get all the way through, and remember, the world is counting on you. Trust in your dragon's might, and you will make it. Normally, at this point, I would just be saying things like, if you're a fan of the Star Fox games, or if you have a thing for games that tell their story more through atmosphere than through dialogue, then you should try this game. And that's true. If those things apply to you, then you should try this game. But I feel like there's a more important issue that needs to be addressed here before I go. If there were such a thing, I would say that the Panzer Dragoon series qualifies to be on the endangered games list. Even to this day, emulation for the Sega Saturn is somewhat spotty at best, and every year there are fewer and fewer working consoles and copies of this game floating around. More than that, the majority of the games in the series have never been ported to another console, leaving the series itself essentially locked to a dying piece of hardware. At this rate, it is only a matter of time before these games are forgotten to history, with the experience of them and the ability to play them, even by proxy, lost forever. I don't know about you, but I'm not okay with that. So for my part, what I would actually like to encourage you to do is to put a little bit of your time into helping to keep these games alive. I don't know specifically what would be the best use of your time and resources, but whatever you can think of to help, even if it's just calling your preferred console manufacturer, or calling Sega of America directly, and telling them that you want to see the Panzer Dragoon games ported to a modern console, then it would be appreciated. These games deserve better than to disappear into the past and be lost. That's it, guys. I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did, please like and subscribe. Feel free to leave a comment or use any of the helpful links down below to show your support directly. Remember, more support means better quality episodes and more of them. Thanks, guys. I'll see you soon, and I hope that you'll join me again on Forgotten Games.